Hello, welcome to Talking Rubbish, a weekly podcast delving deep into the world of recycling and discussing the truth behind snappy headlines and one-sided stories. I'm James Piper, author of The Rubbish Book, and I'm joined by Robbie Staniforth, my far from rubbish friend. And we are joined by Alex Robinson, our far from rubbish guest. So Robbie and I are joined today by Alex, who's the CEO of environmental charity Hubbub. And Hubbub are well known for some of the most amazing and creative campaigns in the environmental space. Anytime you've seen it, you've seen like something about recycling in your street, you thought, oh, that's really clever. I bet Hubbub were behind it, because the things they come up with are incredible. And we are going to talk through some of our favorite campaigns today, things we've been involved with, things we haven't been involved with, and hopefully get some just amazing insights from Alex. So Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Hi James, hi Robbie. Nice to be here.
We gave you a bit of an intro last week, so we spent a lot of time talking about Hubbub, and we literally did 15 minutes on pumpkins, Robbie.
How much pumpkins can we do today? Surely not that much.
I'll try and squeeze in. Let's try and squeeze in a little pumpkin later on.
Missed the opportunity to say squash, but that's okay. That's all right. Oh, goodness me. That was a gore joke.
Yeah, I've been toying with that.
Robbie, we had a bit of a discussion, didn't we, about our interviews? Because normally we just bring the guest in and we just ask questions. And then we had some feedback that actually people were missing our little bantery intro that we tend to do. So we thought, why don't we just do a bit of a, what have we heard this week? What's happened to us? So that everyone who enjoys the intro can have that. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, they've got to get their money's worth.
And I said everyone likes our intro, but that isn't strictly true, Robbie. I did get a message on our WhatsApp last night. This is so live. Last night saying, and I don't know which episode they were listening to, but obviously we had quite a long intro. And I got this WhatsApp come through saying, hurry up, fellas. It's been 14 minutes of Robbie laughing. And I just thought, this isn't live. I'm not sat with the WhatsApp in front of me going, Robbie, we just had a message in. We gotta get out of this intro. So
14 minutes is not long enough, I see.
We've introduced chapters now on Apple. So if you're listening on Apple, you can just skip straight out of the intro. So feel free to do that.
Skip all of Robbie. That's what you're saying, James. That's very hurtful.
It has actually been very busy on WhatsApp, Robbie. Back in episode 9, 6 episodes ago, we talked about LDPE and HDPE, talked about the molecules, talked about flexible versus rigid. And then Adam from RAP was WhatsApping me going, look, guys, you got that wrong. You know, there's some flexible HDPE, there's some rigid LDPE. And we joked about how Adam having instant access to WhatsApp might be a mistake because he's just going to message every episode.
Corrections coming left, right and centre from Adam.
Well, that is what has happened. And he's evolved. He's evolved from the simple text message, the humble text message, to the voice note.
Oh, gosh. So you've got long voice notes now from him to listen through.
Should we do something we've never done on this podcast? We're going to play the voice note. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
Assuming the producers are quite happy with this and it's easy to get in, let's play the voice note now.
Hi guys, it's Adam here. Long time listener, first time caller. Thrilled to have been name checked on the podcast today. I feel like I've made it. My career is complete. I'm a real celebrity, so thanks very much. But true to form, I am going to have to pick up Robbie on a slight error he made when he was talking about the difference between PE films and PP films and used a cereal bag as an example of PP films. Unfortunately, Robbie, mate, you're wrong. That's actually a PE, and it's the exemption for the idea that PE films stretchy and PP is not. So yeah, sorry mate, hate to show you up like this, but there we are. Otherwise, you guys, you've nailed it pretty much generally. So yeah, keep up good work. Look forward to next week. Bye.
Robbie, do you know what I like best about that voice note?
Oh, it's a bit worrying, that voice note.
I know, it made you sound awful.
I'm offended. Oh, not offended. I'm embarrassed.
I think you'll find that Adam was offended. He was fuming that we said that cereal bag liners were made of PP. My favourite bit of the voice note is he said he accused you. You were the criminal. You were the one who had said cereal box liners are PP.
I do remember talking about stretchiness.
Yes. And I think if you want to continue believing that I know what I'm talking about, Robbie doesn't, please stop this podcast now, because I'm about to admit that it was me that said cereal boxes were made of PP and not Robbie.
Oh, yeah. So take that, Adam. It was James you should be blaming.
Yeah, I'm fuming. So I had a little listen back to episode 11 to try and work out who said it, and it was definitely me. So Adam is right. I have no idea where I got my source from. Well, I do know where I got my source from. My source was my book. I have no idea where my book got its source from.
Okay, so this is going to have to be in the 5th edition. You're going to have to be correcting that, James.
So sorry if you've got a copy of the rubbish book and it says cereal box liners are made of PP. And sorry if you listen to this podcast, you also thought the same. I'm glad that's been updated. So thank you, Adam from Rap. Thank you so much for sorting it out and keeping us correct and honest. We appreciate it. What else have we had this week? So Robbie, you were at an event last night, weren't you?
Yes, yeah, very kindly was invited along to an event with some of my colleagues, and I got to saw the big news this week in the world of packaging and recycling is that the Quality Street, what was once a tin and then became the plastic tub and is now becoming a cardboard box. I think there's going to be a limited run I think it's in Tesco, I'm right in saying. They've done this cardboard box to try and make it more recyclable and easy for the cardboard to be recycled. And so they're not even in Tesco's yet. And I have in my hands, brought back from last night from Caitlin, thank you Caitlin, at Nestle, gave me a sneak peek at this cardboard selection box, which we're going to see in stores this Christmas.
And we have one. I've seen
one.
it. It's amazing. Yeah. Caitlin very kindly said she was giving that to the two of us so that we could have a look at it. And yeah, really great. And what I find amazing about Quality Street is I have this, what do I call it? It's the Mandela effect, isn't it? Where you sort of think something is happening all the time and then you realize that's not strictly true. I went to do a presentation to Nestle years ago, and I was trying to look at the different types of packaging they had and how recyclable they were. So I went around buying up loads of their packaging to take with me so that we could kind of talk through and put in order on a line which one was more recyclable, less recyclable, more collected, less collected, et cetera, et cetera. And I couldn't get hold of Quality Street. And really? I just thought tins, tubs of Quality Street are available all year round. And they are not. They are a very Christmas product, and you actually can't buy tins or tubs of Quality Street throughout the year. And for me, that was a big revelation.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we're going to definitely do something on the Christmas theme, aren't we, in a future podcast? So maybe we'll talk a little bit.
We will live eat these Quality Street. We'll just get together for half an hour and eat this tub of Quality Street.
Instead of 14 minutes of me laughing, it will be 14 minutes of me masticating. I'm sure people will like that.
So thank you so much, Caitlin from Nestle. And we normally give away a bit of a gift when we have a guest on. That's what we like to do. So the first week, Natalie gave away the signed books, and I know the person who received those really enjoyed them. And for Nick's episode for Bauer, we're giving away the starter kit we're giving away the kitchen starter kit, which is really great. So what are we going to do? Should we give away this Quality Street tub?
Yeah, because we've prepped Alex really well in advance to come and bring along something to give away, haven't we, James?
I'm refusing to pick our guests based on quality of gift they could bring.
That's probably ethically sound. That's ethically sound.
I'm happy to have a rummage around the office, see what we can come up with if that's part of the condition of me appearing on this podcast.
Do you know what? That would be so good, Alex. So we have a couple of weeks before this episode goes out. We're obviously recording it a bit earlier than it goes out. So on socials, I will put a picture of certainly the Quality Street, and then Alex, you dig through your storeroom, see what you can find, and then we'll add that to the social media post that we put out. So again, if you want to win a tub of Quality Streets that has never been seen before, except between Robbie, me, Nestle, and quite a few people last night, and probably not in Tesco's, but might be because it'll be November when this episode goes out. And you want to win whatever Alex is going to find in the office, which could be
something from our
amazing.
Cupboard.
Yeah, that could be amazing.
Or it could be less amazing.
It could be good.
I feel like I want to manage expectations here with the quality of what's lying around in our office, but
I don't want to give a spoiler to the rest of the episode. We might get into it, but couldn't you give away a ballot bin? Wouldn't that be amazing? Everybody wants one of those ballot bins, don't they?
That is quite valuable. We would end up with quite a few likes.
Valuable. It's like 12 kilos of steel and glass, which is definitely what people want turning up on their doorstep when they listen to this podcast.
Courier that around the country.
Yeah, I'll hand deliver it.
Oh, I like it. Okay, cool. There you go. You heard it here first. It's going to be a ballot bin. Shall we talk about what the ballot bin is? Shall we get on with the interview proper?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, Alex, great to have you on. And I mean, I don't know how long I've been working with Hubbub, but it's many, many years we've been doing stuff together. I think you guys are like so innovative and fun. And when Robbie and I set up this podcast, we said we want to do one of those two things. And which one have we gone with?
And that thing is neither.
Yeah, I think you guys are so innovative and fun. And so, like, Robbie and I, as listeners will know, love a pun. You guys are super creative, and the names you come up with for your projects, I absolutely love. So do you want to give us like an idea, just give the listeners an idea of a couple of your favourite project names?
Yeah, sure. So, well, we have FFS campaign, hashtag FFS, which for us is for fish's sake, which is a project that's all about keeping plastic out of waterways. But do you know the one that comes to mind? And maybe I shouldn't be mentioning this because it's either the pinnacle or it's the nadir of our project names. We did a campaign that was all about raising awareness of the fact that cigarette butts are made out of plastic, and we called it "What's in Your Butt." And it came out. I remember the brainstorm where one of my colleagues, who may or may not want to be named, came up with this idea, and we were collapsing with laughter. I never thought it was actually going to make it through the various stages to get to be the campaign, but we ended up on the streets of Stratford with these made up newspapers and all of these other like campaign materials, shouting about what's in your butt. So that's maybe not proudest moment, but
I can only imagine what those marketing materials look like.
They're good. It's a beautiful campaign, but it's a crude and childish name.
And we've done really cool projects together. So we talked on this podcast before about Leeds by Example, which was a campaign we did up in Leeds, unsurprisingly, where we wanted to find a city that didn't have any recycling bins really and didn't do on-the-go recycling. And Leeds became an obvious candidate, not just for the name, but because they didn't have recycling on the go. And so we approached you guys, didn't we, and said, look, how do we make this happen? How do we make this work? And I really enjoyed that campaign.
Well, it wasn't that hard to find a place that didn't have recycling bins, because at least at that time, it was only a minority of councils had recycling bins on the street. And I mean, a big reason for that is that they just weren't working. So even now in a lot of places, if you go and look in a recycling bin on the street, which I know not everyone does, probably on this podcast, we're in a minority for this kind of thing. You're going to find like banana skins, crisp packets, like anything and everything that isn't recycling. So we brought together a coalition of the council and local NGOs, but also all the people who make the packaging that needs to be recycled, that we consume on the go, and came up with a scheme and interventions to get people to actually recycle the right things when they're out and about on the street, because everyone's eating and drinking out and about much more than they were before. And I think there was so much to this that was about making it simple. It was about like focusing on glass and aluminium and plastic. So it was like bottles and cans, because that's the stuff that always gets recycled, is of high value and is easy to communicate. And then we made these bright yellow bins with really simple iconography, because we know that people spend less than 2 seconds at a bin.
Do you know what I love about those bins? We were tasked with doing surveys. I was up at Leeds quite a few times as we were developing this campaign, and I was like just grabbing people on the street and saying, do you recycle? So this is before we put the bins in. And then after we put the bins in, I was doing similar surveys. And what I found, it was so funny. What I found was people would buy a coffee in the morning, and we forget how much we are creatures of habit. You buy a coffee from the same place every morning, you buy the same coffee, you drink it in about the same time every day, and you put it in the same bin. And you might not think you do that, but like a lot of people from my surveying do that. So we installed 35, something like that, bright yellow bins all over the city. And I'll always remember this guy who I pulled him over and I said, "Hi, sir, I can see you're enjoying your cup of coffee." He said, "Yes." I said, "And where will you be disposing of that when you finished with it?" And he said, "There's a bin down the road I'll use." And I said, "Have you noticed any new recycling bins in the city at all, or any new installations?" And he said, "No, I haven't noticed anything." And he was leaning on the bright yellow bin. Stood next to a giant installation we had put in Leeds City Centre, a shipping container that we'd put in Leeds City Centre, which was explaining all about the campaign. And this guy, honestly, if I could have photographed that moment, he was just leaning on the bright yellow bin, staring off into this massive shipping container that had just arrived in the city that had a massive Leeds by example sign on it, going, "No, I haven't noticed anything." And for me, that was like the pinnacle. I tell that story often because I'm like, that's what you're up against. That's what we have to fight against. Yeah. And I notice it in myself when I buy packaging, when I buy lunch, I notice how much I am a creature of habit. And I have maybe 3 or 4 bins in the city centre that I use because I know where the recycling ones are. I have very specific places I will shop for lunch if I don't bring my lunch in. And you just realise you're battling against something that is actually quite hard. And I think, as you say, one of the key stats you've came out with that is always in my head is about how long people pause over a bin.
Yeah. I mean, I thought to begin with that was just an anecdote about how ineffective our campaign was. But it is...
Well, I am very sorry. That story hasn't... That is true. That story doesn't paint us in a great light.
But it's okay. We've published the results. They're good. But it's so hard to grab people's attention, and we're thinking about it because we are people who are through our work and perhaps just natural inclination are kind of focused on this stuff. Most people aren't. They've got so many other things to be thinking about as they go through their day. Like, this stuff is low on people's minds, so you really have to work hard to kind of get their attention, and then to make it so easy, make it easier to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing.
It's one of the ways you grabbed their attention was with the bubble bin. Can you explain what that was? Because I was there on the day of the launch, and I just remember these bubbles billowing into the distance.
Can I just say the bubble bin might have got this guy's attention. That might have been
for sure.
If he'd been leaning on the bubble bin, I suspect he would have noticed.
Well, maybe that could be the prize for your listener, because that might well be in our storage unit. The storage unit somewhere.
You can't give that away. I want that. Why do we keep giving away presents that I want?
You might have to fix it first. The bubble bin was a bin that it's kind of what it sounds like. When you put something in it, it blew bubbles. That was it, but it was kind of magic. It attracted children and families. People stood around it looking for things to put in it. We have in the past, we've had talking bins, we've had musical bins, but I feel like the bubble bin really took the biscuit. But I would also say putting tech in bins, we have learned many times. In fact, we're about to do it again, but we'll come on to that later. Putting tech in bins is tough because they're on the street. That stuff gets a kicking, and it's exposed to the weather hardy. And so on. So I love the bubble bin, but there's a reason that every street corner doesn't have one.
Amazing. I remember seeing it. It's so good. And you've got some great photos for the report of the bubbles coming out. I can picture it right now. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And Leeds, by example, obviously that was one city. Obviously the pun was very specific. That spun out into In the Loop, which is the idea of Leeds by example, but multiplied out across cities. Do you just want to tell us how that happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole approach at Hubbub is to try stuff out and see what works and then attempt to scale it. And so Leeds by example was the pilot. That was the experiment. And clearly we went for the best name for that city without thinking about the scaling stage. But so it ended up being In the Loop. And that's now in 15 towns and cities across the UK. We took the Leeds thing and we were like, okay, we want to see how this works in some other places. So we did it in Edinburgh, we did it in Swansea, kind of really hands-on, doing the same thing again, because every city has its own different set of circumstances, also its own recycling infrastructure. So could we do glass? In different cities, it's different materials. And And then once we'd really cracked it and we saw that everywhere we were doing it, the recycling rates were going up and the contamination of the bins was going down, we realized that what we could do was create a toolkit to help people do it without us being on the ground delivering it. So councils could introduce it themselves. So we've been recently giving grants to councils, and the councils can then use that to put our bins in, use our designs, use all the information we give them. We do some advice and consultancy on that. And it's working really well. I think we've got 500 of these in the loop bins around the country. We've collected over 2.5 million plastic and glass bottles and cans. And in Lambeth, which is one of our most recent ones, we saw the quantity of recycling go up 140%. And that's like with a really light touch from us. So we've got a really scalable method for cracking recycling on the go for these like these key materials, that mainly the drinks containers. I hope we'll continue to see that like roll out. There's no reason it couldn't be the standard approach on our streets around the UK, but we need a bit more support from government to do that.
Robbie's already mentioned that you might give away a ballot bin. You'd be trucking it all over the country to whoever's won it. But I don't think we can promise a ballot bin.
No,
it's so big.
That's an overstretch, I think.
But ballot bins are my personal favourite. Certainly, I remember back in the day, it was years ago, I saw a ballot bin go viral on social media, and I remember sending it to you and saying, Alex, you've gone viral. And you were like, where was that?
Was that the Ewan McGregor one?
I can't remember.
Ewan McGregor posted it on Instagram in the early days, and it must have been that.
It must have been that. I think the ballot bin is absolutely genius. So some of our listeners might be familiar with it, most won't. So let's introduce the concept to them, because I just think this is great.
Yeah, I will try to describe this. This is obviously an audio podcast, because usually I find myself just showing people a picture, because it comes to life so much better.
Well, do you know what I can try? I'm going to try something here. This is great.
Yeah.
You know how I like tech. I'm going to try something here, because I think there is a way of, when I do the chapters in Apple, there is a way of me having a specific picture that comes up on a chapter. Ooh. Okay, so I haven't tried this yet. Let's try it. So when I'm preparing this podcast to go out, I will put a picture of your ballot bin appear just as we said ballot bin. Okay, so again, I think this will only work on Apple. I feel like we're heavily promoting Apple, but they've been good to us, so that's okay. I think it'll only work on Apple, but maybe check Spotify. But if you're on Apple and you're listening to our podcast now, right in this conversation, have a look and you're now playing, and I reckon there'll be a picture of a ballot bin there if I've got this right. And if there isn't, then that was a great experiment, and I won't do that again. Because I won't know till it goes live.
And for people like me who persist in using like niche podcast software, I'll try and describe the ballot bin. So it is a large yellow voting ashtray, which means you've got something that it's about 80 centimeters high or something and half as wide. And it's an ashtray that fixes onto a wall or a lamppost or something. And at the top, there's a question. So the first question was, and this will date it a little bit, who's the best footballer in the world, Ronaldo or Messi? And then below that, there's two glass columns and a little hole above each column. So when a smoker disposes of their cigarette butt, they choose the answer that they want to vote for, and the cigarette butts mount up to form a kind of live poll, like a bar chart of cigarette butts, which sounds kind of disgusting, doesn't it? It's behind glass. It's clean. There's no smell. And so this uses a behavior change technique called nudge to get people voting with their cigarette butt. And it sounds kind of frivolous, but it's been incredibly effective. And I think it's a really important example of like how we need to look at some of these problems differently. Because when we came up with it, it's about 8 years ago, it was in this project where we were trying to cut litter in a busy street in central London. And doing like observational exercises, just basically standing outside clubs and bars, watching smokers. There were ashtrays there already. There were also signs saying you get fined if you litter. And people were dropping cigarette butts on the floor anyway, because that's the habit that they were into. However, they were like all locked in conversation. And we knew a lot of the people who were littering were young men. So we thought, okay, well, what do they care about if it's not disposing of their cigarette butt properly? It's like, well, they care about football, so let's try this. So we asked them a question. We preloaded the Ronaldo side a little bit just to annoy people, and then saw what happened. And this was one of a number of things that didn't all work, but the ballot bin really, really took off. And we only had this one prototype in central London, and it was working really well. And the phone started ringing in the Hubbub office, like TV companies wanting to cover it, people around the world wanting to buy one, and we're like,
wow,
oh God, we've got one like semi-functional prototype here.
That's amazing. Shows just what a good idea it is.
Yeah, and it's like good ideas spread, right?
And it didn't even blow bubbles. Like, that's mad. It was popular without the bubbles.
No, but there was another one that played music. There was another.
Nice.
There were 2 trials. People forget it because we don't talk about it really. But we had this other ashtray that when you dispose of your cigarette butt, it played a little tune. But that's not much of an incentive. Also, you've got to do the good thing first to get the reward, if you consider it a reward to have it play a little tune. So
you might not know in advance, so you don't sort of know to interact. Yeah. Whereas if you're really keen to steer the vote, you'll definitely put it in one of those columns as you described them. So I don't think we need the photo, James. That was pretty darn well described, Alex. I think we can sack off the photo. You don't need to all move to Apple, although Apple have been kind for us. Please keep passing on it.
I don't care. I'm still trialing it. I want to know if it works. Okay, the photo will disappear now. There we go. That's a good test. We'll see if that works. Alex, I saw a post. I think it was you posting it on LinkedIn the other day with a load of copycat bins. So obviously it's a successful project if other people are copying it. And it was reminiscent to me of, do you remember the ad that KFC did, where KFC did an ad where they did the A to Z, AFC, BFC, CFC. They took out a full ad of the paper of everyone's copycat A to Z, left out the KFC and put there's only one KFC. And your picture just reminded me of that because it was just a page of ballot bins.
Yeah, well, you're kind to say it's reminiscent. I was blatantly stealing that idea from KFC.
Oh, were you?
That was 100% the inspiration.
I genuinely didn't know that. That's not.
Yeah. So I'm glad.
Great.
I'm glad that it resonated. I think KFC's one said at the bottom, like, "Guys, you're welcome" or something.
Nice.
Yeah. So the ballot bin, like, it took off as an idea, and we found a way to commercialize it and sell it. And that was actually what brought me into Hubbub, was like to work on the ballot bin, to try and figure out how we do that. But at the same time that we started to sell it all around the world, we started noticing these copycats pop up. And I'd say they fall broadly into 2 brackets. We've got like the really well-intentioned copies, and we get lots of students who will do it on their campuses and they make their own for projects and stuff.
Okay, yeah. Design technology project or something.
Yeah, I guess so. Or it's like some kind of communications behavior change, psychology students or something. We don't tend to dig into that. Maybe I should ask them, Robbie, why are you doing this? Anyway, and then the other one is we get them copied in countries that wouldn't buy one anyway, because they'd just be so expensive to buy them and with the shipping. So like a memorable one in Cambodia, for example, that was super DIY, but really charming. And I love all those ones. We also have there's businesses of people who've set up to create copies of it and sell those. And
really?
I feel a bit more mixed about those. I think I would mind less if they credited us or responded to our emails. But
they sort of say imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. Yeah. Do you feel that's the case if they've set up their own business and not credited you? I think that's a bit naughty.
I feel like it's naughty not to credit, but we're a charity, and our desire with the ballot bin is, first of all, to reduce the plastic pollution that comes from cigarette butts, because it's the most littered item in the world. People don't know they're plastic. People don't know how many toxins and chemicals are in them. and they just go straight down the drain and into our waterways. So if you're passionate about plastic pollution and so on, then cigarette butts is a great thing to focus on. So we have relatively limited resources. We're doing tons of other stuff. If someone wants to dedicate their life and a business to solving this problem with a product that looks a bit like ours, like ultimately, that's really cool, isn't it? They can send us a donation maybe now and again, but I think it's great, and it also just shows what a sticky idea. A sticky idea it's
Well, maybe they could do a ballot bin that collected money instead of cigarettes, and then they could send you that money. You mentioned earlier you don't like putting electronics in bins, but I'm pretty sure I saw a ballot bin that had a screen on it. I'm sure I saw that on your website while I was having a look for pumpkins. Are you going back to your electronic ways?
We are, for our sins. I think you're talking about the big ballot bin. We spent a long time trying to think of a name for this, but we ended up with the big ballot bin. It's a general waste or recycling bin, like a street bin, and it's black, and it has like a yellow display, a bit like an old style railway, ticker when where the platforms like ticked over. Do you remember those?
Oh,
yellow on black, yeah.
Very retro.
If the first ballot bin worked on Apple, we'll put this one up now.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
This is what a great opportunity for me to test this feature. I love it.
You're so
like an
excited, James.
immersive podcast, and so it only took us about 7 years to figure out that we could do the same thing as the ballot bin, but on a larger scale. And so we made a few prototypes. We tried them out in Southampton and in Manchester, and it was at just the time when Barbie versus Oppenheimer was kicking off. So we just jumped on that. We jumped on that trend. We had a Noel versus Liam one in Manchester, and in Southampton there was a Scott Mills versus Craig David. They're the two big Southampton celebrities, and it just went absolutely viral. There's some guy on Instagram called the Archbishop of Banterbury. Have you come across this person? Oh
yes,
and,
even I've heard of that, and I'm not on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I felt kind of old. It was new to me, but and it was this brilliant moment where like we were getting tons of attention for them. We were on the BBC and ITV and da. But also we did some really detailed measurement of their effectiveness, and they had this is getting into real bin geekery here, but I think your listeners are probably, if they're still with you by now, they're ready for it, aren't they? Yeah.
This is good stuff, Alex. Good stuff.
It has a 70% larger catchment area than a normal bin. So people will travel.
People will commute to the bin.
They'll commute to it. Yeah. So it was incredibly effective. So we are currently redesigning this bin from the ground up, including making it super waterproof and with the most robust electronics ever put in an outside bin. And solar panels and everything. And this is going to be coming to streets near you sometime next year, I hope.
That is, well, I'm excited. That's so good.
So, Alex, another one of the projects that you guys at Hubbub have been involved in is the Community Fridge Network. Did it start in Forest of Dean? I'm sure I remember one being there somewhere. So, but where did it start? How's it grown?
What is it?
What is it?
Don't just start with where did it start. We need to actually explain. We can't just say Community Fridge Network and hope that everyone goes, oh yeah, I know what that means. Do
your own research, guys.
So Community Fridge, if you haven't come across it, and thanks for that prompt, Jose. It's somewhere that brings people together to share surplus food and meet up, learn new skills, and prevent fresh food from going to waste. And it is actually a fridge, and it's in a community setting. So you find community fridges in village halls, community centres, church halls, schools, universities, all kinds of places like that. So it started in Derbyshire, not in the Forest of Dean, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Yeah, in
fact check.
It was part of a project that was trying to tackle food waste like in one place with lots of different interventions, and it was one of the things that we tried. And what's kind of unique about it is that it's somewhere that people can bring food to, surplus food to, and mostly that's volunteers collecting it from retailers, but it could come from cafes, restaurants, homes, community gardens, anywhere that has fresh surplus food. And then anyone can take it. So it's not like a food bank where you have to be referred and where it's trying to address like social need and deprivation. Our starting point was that there is a huge amount of surplus food in the system, even at retail, which is a relatively small part of where food waste occurs. There is just vast amounts of food waste. So by doing this, it's a way of redistributing surplus food, but also because it's about saving surplus food and having an environmental impact, there's so much less stigma around collecting this food in the first place, because you're being thanked for taking it, right? And the idea really caught on, and loads of community groups wanted to make this happen in their area as well. So over the last 8 years, we've gone from that first one to over 650 community fridges. They're in like every single corner of the UK. And
that is incredible. And that is amazing.
It is incredible. And they each are doing like 1 to 4 tons of food every month. They're really different spaces. Some of them might just be outside and open for a couple of hours a week, and others are in thriving community centres that offer tons of other activities. We support the groups to run their community fridges, to collect surplus food, to work with volunteers on all of the health and safety stuff, getting their food certificates and everything like that. And so, we built out this network, and the network itself is like a really live and thriving thing where some of the fridges are talking to each other. They really like the peer-to-peer aspect of it. And you can, if you want to see if there's one near you, you can go to communityfridgemap.org.uk and just type in your town or your postcode, and your nearest one will pop up. So it's been an incredible. It's been just incredible growth over the last few years. And in some ways I've got mixed feelings about it, because on one hand, if I say that we redistributed 18 million meals worth of food last year and we had 600,000 visitors, that feels like something to be incredibly proud of. On the other hand, the community fridge has changed quite a lot over the years, and it would be hard to argue now that this is a purely environmental activity. Like, the reason that the fridges are so common and the reason they're distributing so much food is that there are so many people who don't have access to fresh, healthy food. And so there's huge and been growing demand for it over the last few years. And so what we've been working towards is realizing that our role is not just in facilitating the spread of food and stopping that going to waste, but it's also what is the fridge's role in building community resilience in the places where they are, and what else can we help people to do who run community fridges to serve their communities. And so what we've seen over the last couple of years, what we've done is created around 100 food hubs, which really activities layered on top of a community fridge service. And that might be anything from community meals that might be tackling loneliness, for example. We've got growing schemes, cooking workshops. There's English as a foreign language through the medium of cooking workshops, services for refugees, all kinds of things. But it's all about how food can bring people together, and how collectively tackling food waste together creates opportunities to do so much more. So we've been able to build it out with Co-op and with the food hubs, with the support of Starbucks. And what we're really trying to do is move from like a one-way distribution of food to how can we use it to move people up the food security ladder? How can we build community resilience? What else can we do with this network?
Yeah, that is such a powerful campaign, and thank you for sharing that with us and all that detail. It's incredible. Alex, as you're here, I wrote this Guardian article, which we've talked about. Robbie's fuming. He's in Rubbish Weekly. We've covered that.
That's not a real publication. Or at least if it is, I'm not in that. I just made it
if
up
it
on the
was,
spot.
though, you would be in it. Yeah.
He would, absolutely. Front cover, Mr. Rubbish. But when I wrote this Guardian article, it was really interesting because I had different groups, the likes of Extinction Rebellion and other groups, and messaging me on X because the crux of my article was it's not perfect. Flexible plastic recycling is not perfect. Let's not pretend it's perfect. Let's not pretend everything's amazing. Let's not pretend that everything you put in your supermarket collection point is getting recycled. But every day that goes by, it's getting better. And when people step in and say, this is getting burned or it's getting exported or whatever, it puts people off that behavior change. It puts people off bringing their plastic back to a supermarket. And what I can tell you for certain is flexible plastic that you put in your general waste bin at home is definitely getting burned or landfilled. It's not getting recycled. Whereas if you take it back to a supermarket, they will pick out the stuff they want, which some of the supermarkets have reported is 2/3 of the stuff. And they will recycle it, and the stuff they don't want will go off and get burnt. And I just feel that's better, and that was the crux of my article. And what was interesting is I had quite a few groups message saying, but if you encourage people to recycle, and if you encourage them to do this behavior change, you're just giving everyone an excuse to buy more plastic. So if you tell them that, like, oh, we're going to set up this collection point and we're going to get your stuff recycled, then they don't feel guilty when they're buying flexible plastic, right? And so this podcast is trying to find a balance. And both Robbie and I acknowledge how hard that is, because we want everyone to recycle as best as they possibly can. We want them to know what bin to put stuff into. We want them to feel confident in those decisions that they're making. And ultimately, we want to learn, as Adam from RAP is helping us do, and others. We want to get better. We want to learn. When we make mistakes, we want to talk about it. And that's great. So we've kind of got this platform now, and we've got lots of listeners. We've got lots of people listening to us who I'm worried then go, well, they're telling me it can be recycled, so it's okay for me to buy this stuff, which is the crux of the kind of Extinction Rebellion argument. I guess while we've got your expertise, I would love to know what you think or how you think we get that balance right. How do we educate people about recycling and what can be achieved without giving across this message of, oh, and that means you can buy whatever you want. You can be the consumer you've always been. Because the reality is we all have to buy less, and we all have to be more considerate about the materials that we buy.
That's a big question. And I've seen people saying, well, some of these schemes, they're a deliberate distraction to avoid actually taking any action, which I think is a tough angle too, because I don't know how you would ever... It'd be hard to prove that. Right. Well,
and also, what's the alternative? You don't put in place a collection scheme, you don't recycle, and then everyone says, hey, this is the worst packaging in the world. So you can't have, you can't have both messages. You can definitely have a message of, this is really bad packaging and no one's doing anything about it. Or this is really bad packaging and we're doing something about it. But I think the challenge I have is if people then say, well, flexibles are bad and we shouldn't recycle them. It's like, but then you're promoting landfill, and I just don't think anyone should be doing that. So that messaging is really complicated.
And it is complicated, and I think it's partly why we have to be so vigilant about actual greenwashing, because it makes people cynical, and that cynicism kind of seeps through all of their interactions with like businesses and recycling and these schemes, right? So, like a lot of things, I think a big part of the answer is about creating clarity. Like if we were really transparent about what was happening to the materials that are collected, if we could show where they were being recycled and into what, more often, maybe if even people could track and understand what was happening to the recycling that was collected from their homes better, then I think quite a lot of this skepticism would go away. A lot of the reason I believe that there's so much skepticism in this area is because the industry feels so opaque, and that, your Guardian article was a response to to a project where people put just a handful of trackers right in their waste, right, and that caught the imagination because it's helping people see what might be happening to something that they don't really know what is happening to. And I think the more that business can be transparent, and the more that it can say what its targets are, how it's performing against them, and the public can find that, then the more people are going to be open to having the conversation and less cynical about it. And I think that's true of recycling. Frankly, I work across all kinds of areas of sustainability and environmental behavior change. And it's true everywhere. Like, transparency is really important. And the businesses that are transparent about what they're doing and create the clarity for people, and then also create accountability for themselves, are the ones that are able to build trust. And, there's this saying that sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? I think it's so true. And if we want to get recycling and people's understanding of plastics and the other materials that we use, then we really need to make sure that we're giving them, the people who want it, more clear and reliable information. I guess the other thing is we need to be showing that we're trying to move up the waste hierarchy, right? So we are, at Hubbub at least, and loads of people in this sector, increasingly focused on reusable packaging, refillable packaging, just like minimizing the amount of stuff that we use every day, because that ultimately is the only answer. So industry has to show it's serious about tackling those solutions and putting the amount of resources in that show they're serious about those solutions too.
Very powerful answer. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. So, Alex, I ask all our interviewees the same question at the end, which is, if you had one superpower to save the environment, what would it be?
So I listened to your first interview with Natalie Fay, who had a really wholesome answer. Right? It was all about opening everyone's hearts to the beauty of nature, if I can paraphrase. And it's funny because I had already been thinking about what I think is the mischievous twin of her answer. So my power, if you take a flagrantly anti-environmental or anti-nature action, it would make you really itchy. So nice. if you just do something small, like you buy some unnecessary crap on the internet late at night, then maybe you just get a bit of an itchy scalp for a bit. If you astroturf your lawn you astroturf your lawn even though you know better and you could afford to do something else, then I don't know, that's a few weeks of just devastating itchiness. If you approve an airport extension in your role in government, then you've got a lifetime of just unbearable itchiness. And I feel like that quite quickly would drive much more sustainable behaviors. It could be a real game changer.
I really, really, really like that. And so are you saying the level of impact that your decision had is how long you would then itch for?
It's both length and severity of itching. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I think it's got to be both.
Okay, I see.
I haven't got a full kind of framework for this yet, but if anyone's interested in helping me out with it, then get in touch.
I think that's a great answer. So, good. I can already imagine myself walking home carrying 6 carrier bags worth of shopping because I've forgotten my carrier bags and I really just don't want to itch for a week. So I love it. Yeah. I can imagine it. I think it's great. Are you giving this superpower a name? Last time we had, what did Nick call his superpower?
Plastic Man, which is a techno DJ or techno producer for those who care about that sort of thing. So,
you've joined us for a live brainstorm with Hubbub.
Life's an itch.
Yes. Okay. Life's an itch. We got it. It's perfect. Alex, I am sure I am speaking for every listener when I say that you have added huge value to our podcast, and we have really enjoyed having you here today, and just the insight you've given into these amazing campaigns you're running. You've helped us create a bit more balance in our discussion, and I'm sure everyone thinks that's super valuable. So if you want to contact Alex, how can people find you or Hubbub on social or email?
Yes, so we are hubbub.org.uk. It's our website. And we're on all the socials. Hello Hubbub on Instagram is a good one. You can find me. I'm mainly on LinkedIn, so it's Alex J Robinson on LinkedIn, or just come and find Hubbub on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you. And if you want to connect with the podcast, we are at Rubbish Podcasts on all social media platforms, or you can email us at talkingrubbishpodcast@gmail.com. Our WhatsApp is available on Facebook and Instagram, and our link tree will be in our show notes. So there's loads of ways of getting hold of us. Thank you so much for joining Robbie and me today.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I will now say bye.
Bye.
Bye.